Mr. Davis, go ahead and approach Mr. McFarland, and he'll give you an order.
Raise your right hand, please. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, if you could just sit down in the witness box and please state and spell your full name for the record.
My name is David Kif Davis, and it's DAVIDKIFDAVIS.
Mr. Gilbert, go ahead.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Davis. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. So, first of all, let's start. Where do you live?
I live in St. John's, outside of the main Portland area.
Okay. How long have you lived in Portland?
I've lived here for a little over 20 years.
And what do you do for a living, or what do you do with your time?
I get SSI, and I do a lot of artwork, and I do a lot of filming of various stuff, and I also do a lot of research on political stuff from politicians and their various links to business and various shady people, and I do a lot of stuff that do a lot of deep research into a lot of links of corruption and police abuses and constitutional abuses, and that's one of the main things that I'm interested in, but I do have a lot of interest in.
And are you primarily interested in local politics?
Yeah, mainly because that's the politics that seem to affect me the most. I actually used to not really know much about local politics in general, other than I've filmed the police for 20 years, so I know a certain amount about the police and interactions with them, but I actually didn't really know much about city government until I was made homeless, and there was an incident where I had rented a room off Craigslist, and the guy turned out to be a child molester with links to the Washington County Sheriff's Department. I could name the guy's name if that's...
So this was an event that kind of sparked an interest in you and local government
What happened
issues?
is I found out about this guy and the fact that his former roommate was illegally evicted, and he has links to the police, and his uncle's a high-ranking cop, and he was basically using his family connections to scam people on Craigslist and have them illegally evicted. And this guy had told me about how he caught this guy with his arm around his wife's daughter, and they were watching porn together, and she was like 11 or 12 years old.
So, I don't want to cut you off, but I mean, this event that you're describing, this sounds like, would it be fair to say that you saw corruption, and that was something that
What
sparked your
happened
interest?
was I confronted him about that and the allegations of his former roommate, and he also made these comments to his wife that the reason I actually married you is because I'm in love with your daughter. And then I brought it up, and he said, him and his wife said, you're going to be out of here today, watch. And then they called up the police. They falsified a charge and said I pushed the woman, even though I never was charged with anything, and there was no charges filed, and I never actually did touch her. They just said that. And then the police came, and he mentioned that his uncle, Christopher Gilderson, was Washington sheriff, and I was trying to explain the situation to the cop, and the cop actually said, "Shut the fuck up." And he threatened to arrest me if I kept talking. And I knew I was in a very bad position, and that my freedom was at risk, and also my housing and everything basically, and all my possessions, and I had just recently got off the streets from being homeless, so that was, and then I was basically given the order that we don't care if there's any marks or anything. You're getting an emergency eviction right now, and you need to leave. You can come back and get your stuff later. So that is actually the catalyst in my life that made me really start looking into a lot of the real dark links of Portland Power, and I found a lot of stuff that's very similar to the whole Jeffrey Epstein case that's in the news now, with all the links to pedophiles and people in government. And this is one of the main things that I've been talking about. The first time I ever went to city council was, I think, in 2012, and I spoke about becoming homeless through all this stuff. And then I also spoke about some of the links of actual Nick Fish's former boss, Barney Frank, and how he was implicated in the Franklin cover-up and child sex trafficking with a kid named Johnny Gosh, there's a Netflix documentary about him. So I mentioned all this stuff, and the first time ever that I ever went to city council to speak, they actually deleted portions of my audio from city record, which I believe destroying public records is a federal crime, if I'm not mistaken. But they actually deleted the audio, and you can see where they blur out the screen. The video's still up there. I'm not sure the specific date that I did testify, but I did try to have a few meetings with the mayor at the time, who was Mayor Hales. This happened actually in Gresham, and I didn't know enough about the local political structure to know that I should have gone to the mayor of Gresham. And so I was kind of I've actually done a lot of deep research into, you know, the Iran-Contra affair, nuclear stuff, all kinds of various stuff throughout the years, but I actually hadn't delved into the local corruption as much, and what it really took was me being personally affected and becoming homeless for over 2 years because of this cover-up and nepotism and all the links to power and the police and other stuff. So that's really what actually sparked my interest locally. Other than filming the police, I didn't have too much interest, and I had gone to a George Bush protest, like George W., you know, back in, I only actually went to a small number of protests before that.
So you mentioned like some dark places and kind of dark things that you were investigating. Does that seem fair?
Yes, like Terry Dean, and how he has, you know, he's been a campaign funder. It's been alleged that he's been.
Well, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to know more about how you view your role. Do you view your role as like shedding some light on these issues?
Yes, I view my role as a researcher and a whistleblower, and I actually have a lot of links to the mainstream media. I am actually working on a case right now where a Lincoln City police sergeant allegedly raped a woman here in Portland he was dating, and he drugged her and then anally raped her. And the Multnomah County prosecutors and the DA's office didn't file charges on that case. They dropped the case. And I know Nick Budnick's about to break a story, or he recently did.
So
And I put the woman in contact with the lawyers to sue the city and the police and also reporters. So I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and I've exposed multiple news stories. I've got Terry Bean's political financing of Ted Wheeler, Nick Fish, Joanne Hardesty, the Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, Ron Wyden, Senator Merkley.
Have you ever
All
heard
these
the
people have
you heard?
got that stuff published
Okay.
in actual newspapers, and got multiple stories published.
Have you heard the expression "speaking truth to power"?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you, if anything?
That is exactly what I do on a daily basis, and when I do run across a lot of politicians and various people that are involved in various corruptions and other stuff, I ask them a lot of questions, and they don't want to answer them. And
When you speak truth to power, do you speak directly to those in power, or do you just post anonymously on the internet? How do you do that?
I have a group, Multnomah County Cop Watch. I film the police. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I run an active Twitter account. I have a Facebook page under that. I have another group that people from the public can join. And I post stuff on my various social media sites. I send a lot of information. I correspond with multiple reporters, Maxine Bernstein and a lot of various reporters around here, Nick Budnick, other people, and I've definitely have a relationship with the media on some level where, they might not hold the same viewpoints as me, but they certainly have found a lot of my information interesting enough and enough public interest enough to publicize a certain amount of what I
So you
release to
mentioned
them.
you mentioned that the first time you went to City Hall or a council meeting was about 2012. Is that right?
Yes, I'm pretty
And-
sure that was when I first went, was
Okay.
2012.
And when was the next meeting after that time?
Well, after that, I was, I saw that I went and viewed the meeting online, and I saw that they had blocked out my audio and portions of my audio and portions of the testimony they blurred out. And so I kind of just knew that what I was doing was very important if they're going to go to the extent of possibly violating federal law and destruction of public records just to silence me for, I've actually never seen that on any city council meeting anywhere from anyone, and there's a lot of people that talk about a lot of stuff up there, and a lot of the same stuff I talk about too.
So after that meeting, did you start going to meetings, or did you not go for a while? Like, when was the
Yes, I pretty much started going weekly to, And, you know, that's where I first met Joe Walsh, was I just met him outside of the city council chambers, and I've just kind of just kept going back, you know, to expose this stuff and to keep an eye on things.
Have you gone on a weekly basis from approximately 2012 until January of 2019, or what?
I did go on a weekly basis, and I actually, I used to go to all sorts of public meetings. There's a group that was called COAB and COCL, which was a police accountability thing, which was put into place by the DOJ settlement for the police and the city's treatment of mentally ill people. I went to a lot of their meetings, and now they have a new group that they reformed called PSEP. They actually used me to dissolve the former COCL board, citing some stuff that I said, and Ted Wheeler, one of the first things he did as mayor was go in there and dissolve COAB and COCL, which was actually making some progress and actually had some really good professionals like Tom Steenson, who was the lawyer involved in the James Chassie case, who was a schizophrenic, mentally ill man that was killed by the Portland police. And that's actually the thing that started the DOJ settlement. So, and now Ted Wheeler has gone in there and he totally dissolved that board, and he replaced it with his own hand-selected group of people. And a lot of them are actually like 19, 20, 21-year-old members, not like the mental health professionals and lawyers and other people. So he's basically taken a board that was, and a city agency that was actually making some progress, even though it was a sluggish amount of progress, in my opinion. The level of progress with this new group that he put into place after he dissolved the actual group that was doing some accountability type stuff. You know, so
How do you feel about that? The mayor's decision to dissolve that.
I think Ted Wheeler is one of the most corrupt, evil politicians on the face of the planet. And
Have you ever expressed that view in city council meetings or in any public forum?
Oh yeah, Ted Wheeler does not like me, and
How do you know he doesn't like you?
oh, he's actually he's stated on city record I've gone repeatedly to City Hall for years, and one of the things that is the thing that I sign up for repeatedly is the war on cop watchers, citizen journalists, and activists. And I keep speaking about that because it's an ongoing issue, and the names and the faces just keep changing. If there's a new activist or a new person that starts filming at City Hall, it doesn't take long before they're targeted. So every time I sign up, there's basically a new series of incidents that I can talk about, which is directly targeting of me for my activities, or other people. Some of them are here filming in this courtroom today.
So what do you mean there's a series of incidents? Like something happens as a consequence of being a cop watcher?
Well, there's a man named Eli Ritchie. He started going to city council meetings and filming the police. He had sort of been doing that, I guess, on his own for a while, but not releasing anything publicly. And he had never really done much other than in his own neighborhood and mainly at the Gateway TriMet, and a lot of his interactions were with TriMet police and TriMet. And he started going to public meetings at City Hall, and he started doing stuff like asking the chief of police, Chief Daniel Outlaw, a series of questions. She got a stalking order on him. This isn't my first frame up through Chief or S security, and I was actually physically attacked by a Chief or S security guard, and it came out through our discovery that he was a former LAPD sheriff, and that he had I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like an admission of using, these were the three things they asked him about. And they asked about him using his job position to personally access information that was non-job related, like people that he wanted to run a name check on or whatever. Using unlawful force. And another thing was lying on reports or lying under oath or to his superiors or something to that extent. He had, there was like, I think a number of 10, 30, and 50. So I think the numbers was, he admitted to lying to superiors or perjuring himself 10 times, using
So when we
public
talk
records
about,
to access 30 times and maybe 50 times of unlawful force or excessive force. I can't remember.
let's talk about City Hall, okay? So on January 9th, 2019, up to that point in time, how many times would you estimate you've been to City Hall for a council meeting?
I would say probably a minimum of 100, possibly 200 meetings or more. I don't know.
Is it important for you to go to these meetings?
Yes.
Why?
So I can bring up these various things as they arise, or to speak on city agenda items, or stuff like the G4S $10 million contract for 5 years that they just signed in May with the city, I think it was. So there's always a series of things, from us having levels of lead in our water that are similar to Flint, Michigan, and the cover-ups of that. So there's always something almost weekly that I would have something to say, whether I was, even if I don't go to city meetings, I still do look at the agenda and have my opinions on stuff. Sometimes I don't actually go to meetings. Through this recent arrest in January, they basically said that I caused harm to my victim or whatever, and so they used a no contact order for the last several months on me, so I can't go to City Hall to speak about any of this stuff. And they used my rubbing blood on the wall after I was physically attacked, and the G4S guy dug his claws in and punctured my hand in about 7 places. They they said that, that I basically was to have no contact with my victim. And my victim is the building itself, or this supposed wall of art, which to me is actually just a beige wall with pieces of art on it. It's not the totality of it is not an art wall. They can argue for that or against it, but to me, it's just a beige, bland, mundane wall with some art trinkets on there. And my intention was never to damage anything. I was physically attacked. I have PTSD, and I was triggered, and that's why I rubbed blood on the wall. It was not an intent to damage or anything. If I wanted to damage something, believe me, I could damage something. It's not hard to, you know, if it was my intent to damage anything at City Hall, then my only intent actually was to go there as an artist and a videographer and perform my artistic expression and my creative passion and the stuff I'm passionate about, which is videography and filming. And so I think that it's kind of erroneous that these guys are acting like I'm just like some guy who goes in and I'm there to damage artwork and stuff, when the reality is I am the artist that was damaged by them physically to a point where I had injuries that are still there. I have the scars from the guy's fingers. I'm gonna have these scars on my hand probably for the next 5 to 10 years or so before they fade and I can't see them anymore, or maybe some will be permanent, who knows. But I did not intend to damage anything. All I did was go there to film, and there was no city code about having a light on my camera. That is not anything that's ever been in code. It's not written. I asked them to produce this thing in writing several times. I actually complied with them, and not because I had to, but they asked me to cover my light. I told them, well, get me a piece of tape and I'll cover it, right? And I did cover it. And I had my camera light covered up. Whether it's gonna affect my video quality a little, I actually made a compromise and I put duct tape on my camera. And actually, you know, I have my camera right here right now, and there's the duct tape still on there. But, you know, so I actually did comply, and they still physically attacked me, and it was all based on the stuff that I'm exposing. The week previous to that, January 2nd, I had signed up 2 months in advance to go speak at City Hall. You could even, I mean, it might be relevant to play the City Hall video from January 2nd that shows that I signed up months in advance to go speak, and before I can even gather my stuff, I have 2 guys swarming on me, getting in my face. These are 2 people that know I have PTSD, that actually stated in court records that they know I have PTSD.
How do you know that these other people, or why do you believe that they know that you have PTSD?
Because I state it all the time, because I want to point out that they're consistently violating ADA policies. This is, and I'm not the only one they're violating ADA policy and constitutional law. This is the only thing that sparked this case was the catalyst of me having a camera, which was never in code. There's no city code to not have that on my camera. They did start instructing before city council meetings I think it was 2 months after my arrest, they finally started instructing people that no bright lights. But as you saw and as you asked the one chief arrest lady that recently testified, that she said, well, typically lights aren't allowed. So what that means is typically they aren't allowed, or it's used as an excuse, just like any other thing is used as an excuse for people that aren't mainstream media. Well, when the Bill of Rights and the Constitution was written, the press was anyone who had anything from a piece of paper that would just scroll it out. They didn't have Xeroxes, they didn't have copiers, they barely even had printing presses back then. So a lot of the stuff that was actually being circulated when these constitutional documents were written, and everyone was the press that wanted to be the press, and that's still the rule as far as I see. There's no difference between my right to film or the constitutional rights of a reporter.
Do you consider yourself a reporter?
Yes, I've actually
Or a member of the press?
Yes, I've actually edited and published 3 separate newspapers myself. One was Ship of Fools, one was called the Mile High Hemp Report, and another one was a music related thing for my record label, which was a punk and metal label called Riotous Assembly, which I used out also as a mail order catalog. And I'm in constant contact with the media, like I said, helping Nick Budnick break a case about Multnomah County DAs refusing to prosecute a Lincoln County sergeant that raped a woman. And so I do a lot of stuff, and a lot of my stuff actually does make it into all kinds of various,
Can I ask you
I
about
was
your-
publishing these newspapers back in the early 90s. I think my first newspaper I actually self-published myself was in like 1992. I produced 3,000 to 5,000 copies.
Okay. Can I ask you about something else?
Yes.
Can we talk about your camera?
Yes.
Okay. When did you ask for a piece of tape, a piece of duct tape, and when did you put that on your camera?
Well, it was brought up probably, I would say, maybe 4 to 6 weeks before I was actually arrested at City Hall. So, and like I said, I don't carry a piece of duct tape or stuff around like that, just so I was filming. I was alerted that my light was annoying, and they requested that I stop filming with my light. And I said, well, I have no control over my camera. My camera is automatic. It adjusts the light to the level to get the optimum quality of video. So it kind of turns on and off when it feels like it to adjust for light. So I said, if you want me to turn off this light, go get me something to cover it up. And they came back with a little piece of duct tape, and I did put it on there.
On January 9th, why didn't you put a piece of duct tape on there?
Well, like I said, the week previous, on January 2nd, I had signed up 2 months in advance. It was actually Joanne Hardesty's inauguration day, and I brought up her links to her biggest campaign financer, which is Terry Bean, who's currently on trial for having sex with a 15-year-old. and now he's been accused of having sex with the second one, so there's a second new victim. And also he tried to bribe the victim and give him $225,000, and his lawyer actually got the money and then stole the money and didn't give it to him, and that's actually what re-indicted Terry Bean. But Terry Bean basically was trying to do the Michael Jackson thing and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to this victim and get off with the civil compromise. The judge actually ruled against that because he did try and just offer the kid and make it legal, but that didn't work, so they did a hush-hush deal behind, and then the kid just disappeared for the trial. He was let off. The detectives in the case actually grilled the kid and told him that he would be held as a material witness to testify against Terry Bean and held in prison until the trial, or held in jail. So basically, between the detectives basically bullying this kid and scaring him and making him think that he might possibly go to jail until trial over being the victim of child rape, he fled town, and so Terry Bean wasn't convicted, and now he's being reconvicted, and he's also being charged with bribery, and he's offering a defense of that it wasn't bribery trying to pay this kid behind the judge's back and do it all back door deal or whatever, that it was just his freedom of speech to put it out there that, hey, I can give you all this money and we can make this whole thing go away, you know.
Is this the kind of thing you like to talk about at City Hall meetings?
Yes, this is the type of stuff that I talk about, and this is the exact reason why they used the blood on the wall, which they produced by attacking me, as an excuse to keep me away from City Hall for several months. So I already feel like I've been punished. I haven't been able to speak about all this stuff. Terry Bean actually, in the time that he showed up recently when I was actually excluded on another thing, because Nick Fish gets money from Terry Bean. His senior policy is a man named James Dunphy. James Dunphy got in my face. He said, "Aren't you a sex offender?" And I laid into him verbally with a bunch of obscenities and other stuff, and reminded him that, no, your boss is the one that's Barney Frank involved in this supposed child sex trafficking thing, and your boss gets money from Terry Bean. Like, sorry, you're talking to the wrong guy. And then I actually saw him a couple weeks after that, and I said, you know what, if you want to accuse me of being a sex offender and the stuff that I'm actually exposing all the time, which, these are people that know I have PTSD, so they gaslit me. He came out, I'm not sure if the jury's familiar with the term gaslighting, but what it is accusing people of different things to cast doubt and other stuff, or trying to trigger them. So basically, they knew that, I was preyed upon as a kid. My sister was molested too. I went after her child rapist at 11 years old. I got my ass beat by the guy, and he got off on all his charges and never even went to trial. But, so I am a victim of being preyed upon. I never was actually physically, sexually abused other than maybe like a grope from someone, because I was not ever gonna be that victim. My parents raised me to be a fighter, and no one is ever gonna pull that type of stuff on me, whether I'm 11 years old or 111. So
We heard from several different witnesses, other than the police officers who testified. Do you know, are you familiar with the people who testified in trial?
yes, I'm familiar with them all.
Okay.
They've all
And you've had interactions
gaslit
with
me,
each of
and
them?
they've done all kinds of various stuff. The G4S security head lady, the two head ladies, Dorothy Elmore and the other lady, and that guy John have definitely done the most. I would rank those other people pretty low on the scale, other than trying to block my camera and being slightly annoying and lying in court against me, which I pretty much expect from a mercenary firm like G4S Security, which was formerly Wackenhut, which is a Dick Cheney corporation, they're a foreign mercenary corporation. They're one of the largest employers in the world, and people should really be concerned that we have mercenaries, and that they won't even release the use of force policy to the public, and they won't even release the use of force policy when I'm being attacked and there's obviously force being used. In my last case with G4S, when I was tackled at City Hall, the judge actually ruled that it was totally irrelevant to my case, since force was being used, that I should be able to at least see the policies of force to see if they went beyond what is lawful and what is not. And obviously I don't think that it's lawful. And the real thing is, I was never intending to stay in City Hall. I kept getting pushed and harassed, so I dropped to the floor. And then I was about 5 feet away from going out the door, and they start pushing me, so I dropped to the floor again. And you'll see this in the video. And then I get up. After a minute or two, I get up. I'll say, okay, I'm just gonna go, you know. And then they start pushing me from behind. So I grabbed onto the door, and then the G4S security guy dug his nails into my hand. I would have let go of the door if I didn't have people pushing me from behind. I don't know if my video shows it as much. I haven't watched it for a long time, and I only have watched it a couple times, but it should show that they're pushing me from behind, and then the one lower ranking G4S lady, she's actually trying to sweep my feet out from under me. So I have people pushing me from behind, and the G4S lady trying to sweep my feet out from me, and I'm not supposed to like hold on to a door or anything. And so I just view this as, this was me filming at City Hall. They used a light as a catalyst to physically attack me. I mean, people have said, most of the jury said that they do not believe in, that they believe in protest, they believe in constitutional rights, but they don't believe in violence. Well, that's pretty much how I am too, and that's why I didn't react violently. And that's why I am the victim here and not them. And the reality is I was attacked, and all I was doing was filming. And I view their I view their order as being unlawful because the light was the catalyst. There's no city code that ever mentioned that. And I asked the auditors and G4S and all of these guys to produce if there's a thing against having a light on your camera to actually produce it.
Did that day when you had the camera, did anybody other than the security officers you talked to, did anybody tell you to turn your camera light off? Or did anybody wince, or did you see anybody that was like, covering their eyes or anything like that
Well,
while you were in the council chambers?
I think Amanda Fritz might have mentioned that it's annoying, and
On that day?
she might have. I mean, I gotta say, yeah, my light is a little bright, but there's been multiple cameras in City Hall, and like the G4S lady said herself, that typically lights aren't allowed, but obviously typically doesn't mean always. And typically, when applied to me, means I don't get the same rights as, like, when I want to ask Nick Fish a question, right? I get attacked by security guards. It's
So,
my,
I have the videos that you gave me, these are videos that you made that day, is that right?
yes.
Okay.
I actually have body camera videos too, but I didn't produce them because they're kind of redundant. And
So I have 3 videos on here. You made each of these videos?
yes.
And those are all made on January 9th, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna open this up.
For the record, we're talking about Defense 101.
This is, I'm holding a flash drive marked as Defenses 101.
Let me know if you need any help with TV or whatever.
Can everybody on the jury see this? Okay? Or I'll do my best to stand out of the way.
Oh, the podium just needs to move.
Oh. Okay. Can you see this, Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay.
Can all of you see where? Okay.
Okay. Do you recognize? what
Yes,
we're
Nick
looking at?
Fish.
Okay. I'm just gonna, and this is a video that you made.
Yes.
If you're willing to talk about your relative, Peter Stuyvesant. Wasn't he,
Is that you
Yes.
speaking?
anti-Semite that banned Jews from the original colonies? Or what? You know about that history, right? He tortured Quakers. I don't know. I will. I'll just take that as a no comment, and
Have a seat.
I'll ask you these questions at a later date.
Do you understand?
Who are we? Who's this? And
She's the GPRS assistant head.
is that Cheryl Guerrero?
Yes. And as you can see, she's threatening to have me ejected from the meeting.
I'm allowed to sit here. I'm allowed to sit here.
Have a seat.
I will.
Have a seat.
I'll sit on the floor again if you want to try and stop me from asking
And we'll
questions.
get you out before it ever starts. So
Cool,
it's your
I don't
choice.
care.
Have a seat.
I can do that.
Have a seat, Jared.
I can do that. I can do that, though.
Have a seat.
Reserved. I wonder who.
Okay, so
Can I just ask my clarification, is this for January 9th?
this is your.
Oh, okay, I just.
Okay, so at this point, has the meeting begun?
No. And I was already, she got in my face and said, I'll have you removed before this meeting even starts. And then I said, well, I'll just lay on the ground or whatever, And she's like, well, so she's already, I'm asking a public official a public interest question about his racist, anti-Semite ancestry. I think that people should know about their politicians and if they come from these political dynasties that have been around since before the country was even formed. I mean, it kind of shows the level of person that Nick Fish and Ted Wheeler are. They're both Harvard boys, and they're both elitist, and they're both part of this these dynasty families that have ruled over this country, and the corruption and slavery and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
So, I believe I heard Ms. Guerrero say, or you said something to Ms. Guerrero about, I'll lay on the floor like I did before. Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Okay, and what were you referring to?
I've laid on the floor at City Hall before when I get either physically attacked or when they're trying to unlawfully give me orders and all kinds of stuff. If I feel that I view constitutional law and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution as that's the diagram and the blueprint I work off of. I don't care that some low-rank security guard that doesn't even understand the concept of de-escalation or anything, that's just there for a paycheck, that's actually there to crap all over the Constitution and my constitutional rights and not do anything to defend the Constitution whatsoever. I mean, so.
Have you ever seen Ms. Guerrero interact with other people who were there?
Yes, she's very aggressive, and I think it's very interesting too that she was a mental health professional, or if you quote unquote professional, because she's obviously not a professional, but she was in a mental health wing of a woman's prison where she's perfected the art of gaslighting people and using stuff to trigger the mentally ill. And I can only assume that as her role as a prison guard in the mental health wing, that sometimes she'd do the same stuff and get in mentally ill prisoners' faces, gaslight them to the point where they're getting additional charges. So I can be very speculative, and I'm sure that has happened on multiple occasions. So she's obviously not trained in de-escalation, and she said she didn't even try to de-escalate anything.
Have you ever seen Ms. Guerrero interact with people who, as far as you knew, she wasn't familiar with?
Yeah, I've
Like
seen
people
her.
who were not regulars.
Yeah.
And did she treat them the same or different?
Oh, she treats them totally different.
How
I mean,
is that?
and if you're one of the people going there actually exposing any of the corruption or talking about anything, you're going to get treated differently from Ted Wheeler down to the G4S security and all that. Because, you know, you can, when you sign up to testify at City Hall, it's actually your time to speak. And you go there and you get your 3 minutes, which they actually circumvented the rules over Sam Adams, because at the Multnomah County Commissioner's Office, just across the river from here, you can walk in there anytime they have a public meeting, and you can go and you can fill out the paperwork to sign up to speak that exact day on something that happened that previously or whatever you want to talk about. Well, there was the sex scandal with Mayor Adams, and there was repeated people that came back to City Hall talking about his sex scandal with his 17-year-old worker, and so they actually changed the rules at City Hall to where you have to sign up in advance to speak. You can't just go in there and speak, and that's really problematic, because if there's a police shooting or if there's an incident that happens in the city and it's something that happens immediately that week that you want to talk about, you shouldn't have to shelf public interest matters and stuff that you can speak about in almost every other city forum, like across. They don't do that. They don't make you sign up in advance to speak at city council meetings around the country. That's not the. They specially tailored the Constitution and the constitutional rights of citizens to redress their government in the city of Portland to cater to Mayor Adams and his alleged pedophilia, and the fact that people were going there every week to talk about his pedophile or alleged pedophile behavior. So he changed the rules, and so you know, I was never at City Hall. I never testified on anything. I never went into City Hall during Sam Adams thing. And I was, you know, like I said, I heard a little bit about it. I didn't know that much about it. I know a lot about it now, actually, and all kinds of stuff, but,
Let's return to the video.
Who these seats are reserved for? I think I'm gonna go in the hallway and wait for my favorite buddies to come walking in.
Okay, cool. I think that's
So is there some police-related agendas today?
No.
So are you just here to police activists then?
No, sir.
Just here to observe the city process?
Here for a proclamation.
No.
Let me know if he's harassing you.
That's so funny. So the G4S lady just said that, let me know if he's harassing me. There's no meeting happening yet. It's not even in session. So you're allowed to walk around freely. The meeting's not even in session yet, so you need to learn the rules. No, I'm not gonna have a seat, especially if the meeting's not. So I was just asking this man a couple questions.
Good morning, everybody.
I'd like to point out that this G4S lady, she framed my interactions with this police officer as being derogatory. I mean, we're not the best of friends or anything,
President wants to address council.
Make sure they're on the record. Go ahead.
Okay.
but I mean, I think the point out that this G4S lady, she framed my interactions with this police officer as being derogatory. I mean, we're not the best of friends or anything, but.
Okay.
I mean, you can obviously tell that we're not the best of friends, me and the assistant chief there, but I'm actually pretty respectful with him, and we've had several conversations, and I've never used any real derogatory language with him, and obviously not in this video clip, but you know, the little frame up scenario that they're trying to you know, cast and write the script for, they're trying to say that my interactions with that officer right there, that I was derogatory. I don't view that as derogatory. And I asked him a question. He basically said, I'm here for city council, and I wasn't continually harassing him or even continually asking him questions, which would be my right to do if I had felt so, because it's constitutional to ask any public official questions, and it's their constitutional right to say no comment, to answer them, or to not answer them.
You were talking to a police officer, correct?
Yes, I think
Okay.
his role as the assistant chief.
Okay. He's a member of the Portland Police Department.
Okay.
Okay. And did you speak to any other police officers while inside council chambers that day?
I don't think so.
Okay,
He was
so-
the only one there, actually.
And so when you were when we heard testimony earlier about you using derogatory statements, could you have understood that as being directed at anybody but that person?
Well, she specifically said that I was harassing the assistant chief and using derogatory language. Well, you know, I think the video evidence speaks for itself. If there was no derogatory language, there was no curse words, I was relatively nice, polite. I just simply asked him a question. He said, I'm here for the meeting, and showed that he didn't necessarily want to interact with me, and I pretty much I mean,
So I saw the
obviously
video.
I could ask the assistant chief of police like 100 different questions, but I'm just like, cool, okay. I'm here
So I
for
saw the
meeting.
video. We all saw the video. Did you have any interactions with this gentleman that was not videotaped that day?
Oh, no.
All right, I'm gonna play the next video.
Lead in our drinking water is freedom and public trust. Good morning. My name is Dee White. I'm grateful to be among this amazing group of folks here this morning for communications, Star, Mimi, Stephen, and Charles. Thank you all for your tireless, unpaid work on behalf of Portland's most vulnerable. For far too long, I've come before you to protest your misguided drinking water policy. Beginning in 2013, our former water commissioner perpetuated a culture of mismanagement at the Water Bureau that has not protected public health. Water Bureau directors have not done their job delivering safe drinking water to many of their 1 million customers in the region. Here are some facts. There is no safe level of lead. It's a potent neurotoxin that is especially harmful to pregnant women, newborns, and young children. You cannot see, taste, or smell lead in water. Here are more facts. The more corrosive the source water, the more lead leaches into drinking water. Portland officials have long known Bull Run water is corrosive, and further, that inadequate treatment would cause higher levels of lead in our drinking water. The result? Portland continues to have the highest levels of lead among all large cities in the U.S., not just western cities. We're still number one. You haven't followed the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act for 27 years, and you insist our water is safe to drink despite the threat of this profound neurotoxin. At the same time, the near zero potential of cryptosporidium sickness from Bull Run water has been escalated to such a serious health threat that a $500 million filtration treatment plant is still being sold to an unwitting public. Last year, former Commissioner Saltzman opined that shutting off water due to unpaid water bills is a form of child abuse. Let me add this. Isn't it child abuse to improperly treat these children's water? You could immediately protect the vulnerable with free filters, but instead you downplay the threat and blame customer plumbing. As elected officials, what you continue to do today is reward engineering and construction corporations and your own financial interests over the public health and the common good. And this, Mayor and Commissioners, is a betrayal of the public trust at its essence.
Just for those who may be watching and have heard this for the first time, I want to reiterate previous facts that have been stated. Raw water, the pH is 7, which is neutral, which is uncorrosive. Unfortunately, that means that it needs to be made more alkaline in order to reduce the amount of lead leach from fixtures. If you at all, and that's what we're doing. The council has approved a treatment plan to do that, which will be online by 2022. It can't be possible. So that is what's happening right now, and was started under Commissioner Fisher's leadership. And if you're at all concerned about whether you have lead in your water, please call 8234,000, 8234,000, which is the City County information line, and ask to be referred to get a free lead testing kit that you can do in your own home, mail it, and we will send results to you. So again, thank you very much, and I appreciate the advocacy.
So this, again, this is you filming this?
Yes.
Okay, and did we just hear somebody say to turn your light off?
Yes, John, the security guard, dug his claws into my hand. He said, Mr. Davis, can you turn your light off?
Okay, and that's the first time that day that you interacted with that gentleman?
I might have seen him down, like, any interaction where we actually kind of talked, probably.
Was that the first time you said anything about your camera? That day?
Yes.
I'll never refuse to talk to you. I'm currently in litigation with G4S Security, so get out of my face. Get out of my face. I'm currently in litigation with G4S Security, so get out of my face. Turn your light off, please. Please, turn your light off. Get out of my face. I'm currently in litigation with G4S, and this is harassment. So, get out of my face. I'm currently in litigation with you guys. Just ask me to turn your light.
What's going on when the camera is pointing, it's not pointing at anyone, it looks maybe it's down or sideways? What's going on at the moment?
That's more just me being slightly distracted from my filming by this guy getting in my face, and
Is there another voice there too?
I didn't hear anyone, but yeah, basically, I'm just telling him to get away from me, and I tell him that it's harassment, and actually under the ORS status, it is harassment to get in people's physical space and do that. So what he is doing to me right there is actually an ORS crime of harassment. So every time I go to City Hall, that these people actually get in my physical space, and you know, you can all Google it when you get home or whatever, but what he's doing is that is the definition of harassment, and you can actually use physical force and other stuff to get people to not harass you. So I'm very polite, and I don't put my hands on people even when they bloody me. So, and what he's doing is harassment. He has 42 years as a police officer under his belt, 6 years, and there's no de-escalation. It's all about harassment. You know?
Who's this in that orange shirt?
That's Joe Walsh.
Get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you. Get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you.
Now we cannot trust you. Not that hole! Not that hole! Excuse me, Mr. Walsh. Please, somebody...
In the back talking
You're going to have to leave and interrupt communications. You're going to have to leave.
Okay, did you hear somebody saying knock that off?
Yeah, that was Joe Walsh telling John, the G4S security guard, to stop. Like, I actually stumbled over a chair and he was just putting his hand in front of my camera and all that. So Joe Walsh was just saying, knock it off. It's his constitutional right to film and leave him alone.
Okay, so we see 5 people sitting in a long bank here. And
Yes.
Just broadly, who are these people?
Chloe Daly, Amanda Fritz, Ted Wheeler, who's the mayor and the police commissioner, which is a dual position of power, which lends to total corruption, and that needs to be totally changed in our city. And then we have Joanne Hardesty, and then we have Nick Fish, who's actually the former Water Bureau person that the lady was testifying about, who actually is responsible more for the lead than Amanda Fritz, who they just gave to basically Ted Wheeler and Nick Fish are these 2 Harvard guys, and I think they basically realized that, hey, let's just give this bureau to Amanda with the lead, and we'll make you the parks guy, Nick Fish.
You interrupt me to do right, asshole! We're going to take a recess. You're going to not Is it all right? And you question me? You asshole! You trumpet! You Republican! Shut up! Get out of my face! 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 Joanne Hardesty, you support the war on cop watchers, citizen journalists, and activists. You need to do something about the disruption, and it's called G4S security guards.
Everybody out.
G4S security are the disruptors, not the activists. You can't see that? Are you blind? Are you blind? Are you an accountability activist?
Go. You're going.
Are you really? Are you really?
Let's go.
Are you really an accountability activist? Do you believe in accountability? You didn't see these guys attack me physically after I gave my testimony last week? Within a couple seconds, you were right here. Let's go, Dan. And then I saw your statement in the Tribune about how you, Davis, how you don't like, you know. So maybe what you need to do is talk about these disruptors. You need to talk about these disruptors. You're out of here. Let's go. No, you're going this way. Maybe I'll sit on the floor. Maybe I'll sit on the floor. Ow. No. You're going out. Get your hands off me. Ow. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Out the way. No.
When they put their hands on me, I dropped to the floor.
They're laying on the floor. Do you want to be arrested?
Yeah. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Maybe I'll just piss on the floor. Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Who's going to clean that up? You?
That's a violation. We'll get you right now. Okay, go right in.
No. Hey, you want to answer any questions about your death threats on your husband, Dorothy Elmore? Dorothy Elmore, you want to answer questions about your death threats? Your death?
What is in the view there?
See, this is Dorothy Elmore. She was the assistant chief of police, who's now the head of G4S security. She, when she was the assistant chief of police, she has a husband, Vince Elmore, who was actually involved in the COAB board that I was talking about, which is part of the DOJ settlement. So she, when she was the assistant chief of police in Portland, she made death threats against her husband. She slashed his tires. She said she was going to shoot him with her gun. And then she came to court today to lie, to say that
Okay,
she...
you can't comment on the credibility of another witness.
Okay,
The jury
well,
will disregard
yeah,
that.
they can see the video evidence speaks for itself. But Dorothy Elmore came to City Hall today. She's the head G4S lady who's right here, and she testified that she had no interaction with me when I was on the floor.
And did
when, yeah, obviously she's got her scarf and she's dangling it in my face, and then she's shoved. So obviously she has interaction. So I don't see why her selective memory has deleted this file in her brain. They're to cover up. Probably see the other dress lady trying to sweep my feet out. Maybe, you know.
Cool, let's do it. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Police have my arrest. All right, let's go. If they can come to my house if they want. Let's go. Oh, look. Let's go. Look at this. Let's go. Look at all this blood. Here, you want some blood evidence? Look, it's blood evidence. Blood evidence. You're filming it. Why don't you? You don't want to film all the blood? You don't want to film the blood? No, because I don't have a camera. You want to film the blood? You got to file a complaint on it. I'm already doing it. You got to file a complaint? Calling the lawyers already. You don't even know what's going on here, Joe. That's true. I don't know what's going on. I won't. Yeah, you need to pay closer attention. If you need me to fill you in, you got my phone number. I know where you live. We can have a good conversation.